We have been in close contact with our sources on this case since day one, and we continue talking as much as possible. I learned from a highly reliable federal source that they are now discussing bringing in new tools for the investigation. Over the last 72 hours, 3 confirmed official statements dropped, but the home security video still is not ready. Forensic analysis is still underway, and the DNA evidence has not hit a dead end yet. Those final words matter far more than any official statement made about this case in the last few weeks, because there is a very specific reason why an active DNA sample would be moved from one laboratory to another. And the scientist who has personally solved 6 cases using this exact type of forensic evidence, the very same evidence currently sitting in the FBI lab in Quantico, Virginia, heard those words and reacted. We will get to that shortly. But first, where this investigation truly stands on day 120, and what the Pima County Sheriff's Department finally confirmed after 2 full weeks of absolute silence. What the science in Quantico now says is possible, something no lab could ever claim before, and what the woman, whose mother, missing 4 months, decided to do with $500,000, and what that financial decision reveals about whether she truly trusts that the official investigation will solve this mystery on its own. Day 120, the full picture. If you have been following this case, you already know the basics. On January 31st, at 9:48 p.m., Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, a mother of 3 and grandmother, is dropped off at her Catalina Foothills home in Tucson, Arizona, by her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni. He waits 2 minutes, watching her walk safely inside. The garage door closes at 9:50. He drives away. That is the final confirmed moment anyone ever saw Nancy Guthrie alive. 4 hours later, a masked figure emerges on her front door security camera, wearing a ski mask, a holstered handgun chest-mounted, and a 25-liter black Ozark Trail hiking backpack. He holds a flashlight clenched between his teeth. He places a gloved hand directly over the camera lens, then uses a nearby bush to block its view even further. The doorbell camera goes offline at 1:47 in the morning. At 2:12, 25 minutes later, the motion sensor registers activity on the property. There are no recordings because Nancy had no active subscription. The system registered the movement, but saved no footage. And 16 minutes later, at 2:28 in the morning, Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker app loses connection with her phone. The phone remained inside the house, and Nancy was taken out of the device's Bluetooth range. It has been 120 days since that night. The total reward for information in the case now stands at $1.2 million. No arrests. No suspects have been publicly named. That was where things stood on day 100. Here is what changed in the 72 hours leading up to day 120. For 2 full weeks in late May, the Pima County Sheriff's Department, leading the investigation, maintained total silence on the status of the case. No press conferences, releases, or updates. For 14 days, the investigation went completely dark to the public. On May 29th, Michael Ruiz of Fox News Digital officially contacted a department spokesperson. For the first time in over 2 weeks, they confirmed the status of 3 specific investigative leads. The home security video from Nancy Guthrie's property. Investigators still have not finished reviewing it. Forensic analysis is still ongoing. And the DNA, these were the sheriff's spokesperson's official words, the DNA analysis has not hit a dead end. Think about what it means for a police spokesperson to officially confirm these leads to a prominent national reporter. Investigators do not confirm active leads in such a high-profile case, just out of politeness. They do it because they are real. These are not mere expressions of hope, but legal and investigative commitments. All 3 avenues remain active. Each was confirmed within that same 72-hour window. And Sheriff Chris Nanos himself, speaking to People and Men's Journal magazines on May 16th, added this about the DNA, quote, "We have DNA from an unknown donor, but I think they are getting close to finding out who it is," end quote. Getting close, present tense, straight from the sheriff himself. But those 3 active leads were not the only things confirmed in that 72-hour window. Something major surfaced at CrimeCon 2026, a true crime convention in late May, that exposed this investigation's flaws in front of prominent legal experts and live cameras. The panel included Paul Morrow of Fox Nation, defense attorney Donna Rotunno, and journalist Josh Ritter, alongside Michael Ruiz of Fox News Digital, the very reporter who broke the police department's silence. And what that panel officially revealed about the handling of key evidence was the following. A hair recovered from Nancy Guthrie's house was sent by the Pima County Sheriff's Department to a private lab in Florida called DNA Labs International, not the FBI, not Quantico, but a private lab in Florida. According to the panel, the FBI dispatched a plane solely to transport that evidence to Quantico, and it took federal agents 11 weeks just to access it. Paul Morrow's assessment at CrimeCon, and I quote, "The DNA should have gone straight to the FBI, and they apparently weren't cooperating." This isn't just a commentator's opinion based on mere speculation. It was independently confirmed by a high-ranking official inside the FBI itself. Ben Williamson, the FBI's Assistant Director of Public Affairs, posted on X in April 2026. The FBI asked to test this DNA 2 months ago using standard technology, but the local sheriff chose to send it to a private lab instead. 2 months. The FBI was ready, yet the hair remained in Florida. It took 11 weeks and a plane to transport it. That is the official record. The hair is finally in Quantico. We will spend much of this episode explaining why this matters, and what Quantico can do now with that sample that Florida couldn't. But before we get to that, a conflicting signal complicates everything the PCSD confirmed. Brian Entin is the lead national correspondent for News Nation. He has covered this case on the ground nearly every day since the early weeks of the investigation. He has inside sources that no other national media outlet can match. And on May 11th, after 100 days, on his show, on Brian Entin Investigates, Entin said this, quote, "My sources close to the case unfortunately tell me they are no closer to solving the investigation. My sources close to the investigation unfortunately tell me they are no closer, in terms of solving the case. Now, that doesn't mean they aren't doing massive work behind the scenes," he added. "That doesn't mean they aren't working hard behind the scenes. But I don't get the sense, from my sources, that they are getting very close. But I don't get the feeling, based on my sources, that they are closing in." Again, tips are still coming in every single day. At first, there were thousands upon thousands of tips, and even more keep pouring in. The PCSD spokesperson says there are 3 active leads and that the DNA hasn't hit a dead end. Meanwhile, Brian Entin's sources say they are nowhere near solving it. Both statements were made within the same 72-hour window. Both are official. They can't both be entirely true at the same time. If you have been following this case and want to hear every confirmed update instantly, subscribe. Hit the notification bell. We cover the entire Nancy Guthrie investigation here. Whenever there is a real breakthrough, we will resolve that contradiction. But to do that, we must take a deep look at what the DNA evidence actually is, and where it is right now, and what it is scientifically capable of revealing now, for the very first time. Because those 5 words from the PCSD do not mean the same thing to everyone who reads them. And once you grasp what that evidence is, you will understand why they chose them so carefully. Let's start with the blood. When investigators arrived at Nancy Guthrie's home on February 1st, they found blood. Not inside, but out on the porch. Drops. A trail leading from the front door toward the driveway. That blood was analyzed. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed at a press conference on February 5th that the blood belonged to Nancy Guthrie. She didn't make it to that door. She was taken through it. Forensic pathologist Michael Baden analyzed the blood droplets from videos and photos, and was clear this blood fell on the porch during an abduction. They indicate this didn't happen innocently. That blood is also DNA. And Sheriff Nanos addressed it directly. Quote, "We believe we might have some DNA belonging to the suspect. But we won't know until that sample is separated and sorted. We believe we might have some DNA there that belongs to the suspect, but we won't know until that DNA is." And here is the complication. The DNA found at Nancy's house isn't a clean, single-source sample. It is a mixed sample, which means it contains genetic material from several people. Nanos himself confirmed. "Our lab is telling us there are difficulties with it. A mixed sample containing multiple profiles is one of the most complex challenges in forensic DNA science. That DNA gets separated, sorted, and maybe entered into CODIS, or perhaps resolved through genetic genealogy. That is crucial. The technology to fully separate 3 or more profiles in a way that is admissible in court, and with the precision a jury expects, is still being developed. That is not a flaw unique to this case. It is the current state of science. But it explains why the blood, despite the sheriff declaring publicly that it might contain the suspect's DNA, has still not yielded a name. Former FBI agent Jim Clemente proposed a crucial hypothesis about the blood. Speaking to News Nation, Clemente broke it down like this. If 2 people had been involved in the kidnapping, one would have stayed inside the house to control Nancy. She wouldn't have ended up bleeding on the front porch. The blood trail leading from the front door to the driveway suggests to Clemente that a single suspect committed the abduction. One suspect, a DNA profile waiting to be found in that mixed sample. An intruder whom investigators are desperately trying to isolate. At 2:12 a.m., 25 minutes after the doorbell camera went dark, the security system detected motion on the property. 16 minutes later, the pacemaker went offline. That 41-minute window, between 1:47 and 2:28, is the timeline investigators have been probing for 120 days. Everything that happened to Nancy Guthrie occurred in that gap, and the only publicly confirmed physical evidence from those 41 minutes is her blood on the porch, a trail leading down to the driveway, and a mixed DNA sample that forensics still hasn't been able to fully separate. Now, the gloves. After the abduction, about 16 gloves were found near Nancy's house. Later, the FBI clarified that most belonged to search volunteers, but one glove stood out. Its design, color, and make seemed to match the gloves worn by the masked suspect in the doorbell camera footage. That glove was sent for analysis. The result yielded a DNA profile that was entered into CODIS, the FBI's national database. No matches. They also compared it with the DNA found inside Nancy's house. Still nothing. PCSD later confirmed the glove belonged to a restaurant worker with no connection to the case. That lead is dead. Which brings us to the hair. And this is where the investigation on day 120 looks entirely different than day 1. On April 16th, Brian Entin confirmed something that had not been publicly revealed until then. DNA testing at the Quantico lab included strands of hair recovered inside Nancy Guthrie's home, not on the porch, not in the yard, and not 2 miles away, where the gloves were found. Right inside the home where Nancy Guthrie lived, slept, and was taken from. DNA Labs International in Florida analyzed the hair, but failed to get a usable profile. And the reason, the specific forensic cause that explains why this evidence matters so much, why it was moved, and the heavy weight of those 5 words from PCSD, is this. The hair has no root. Think about it. When hair sheds naturally or is pulled out, it can fall with or without the root attached. A hair with a root contains nuclear DNA, the gold standard in forensic identification. It is fast to extract, reliable to sequence, and can be matched directly against the National CODIS database. If the hair found inside Nancy's house had a root, this case would likely be solved by now. That is not speculation. It is the cold forensic reality, and the science is crystal clear. A hair without a root, meaning just the shaft, was virtually useless for identifying a stranger, using the technology of just a few years ago. You could extract mitochondrial DNA from the shaft, which is useful for confirming biological sex or determining species. But mitochondrial DNA does not produce a specific genetic profile to identify someone and build a solid court case. With older methods, a rootless hair was simply cataloged, preserved, and investigators prayed for a miracle. It could not be cracked. That is why DNA Labs International in Florida failed to get any results. C.C. Moore, chief genetic genealogist at Parabon Nano Labs in Virginia, one of the most respected figures in forensic DNA science in the United States, told Fox News Digital that DNA Labs International was trying to perfect its technique for analyzing rootless hair, but she did not know of any successful cases from that lab using that method. So, they moved the evidence. That is the technical reason it is now in Quantico. And here is what C.C. Moore said when Brian Entin confirmed the find on April 16th. The hair can absolutely solve this case. I am very excited. Remember that statement, because it is crucial. But first, understand the reason for her excitement. The breakthrough is a method by Dr. Ed Green to extract a complete SNP profile, a single nucleotide polymorphism profile straight from the hair shaft, requiring absolutely no root at all. These SNP profiles offer the exact same identifying power as nuclear DNA. They are used to build a genetic genealogy case and can be uploaded to public databases. That is how they find relatives, and with them, a name. Moore explained the leap. Genetic genealogy only emerged in 2018. The technique Dr. Ed Green developed to pull a genetic profile from rootless hair is newer still. It is a massive leap forward, opening the door to solving countless cold cases. This technology did not even exist at scale when the investigation began. DNA Labs International was trying to apply a highly preliminary version of this technology. The FBI lab in Quantico, collaborating with who Moore believes will be Astria Forensics of San Francisco, has the full, proven capability to pull it off. This is not theory. It is case-closing technology with a proven, real-world track record. Moore pointed to Astria Forensics as the most likely partner to process this evidence. Astria is the San Francisco lab that pulled the genetic profile from rootless hair found at the Gilgo Beach crime scene. The evidence was so overwhelming that Rex Heuermann, the architect accused of murdering 8 women on Long Island across nearly 2 decades, pleaded guilty in April 2026. His defense stood no chance against the profile Astria built from strands of hair that older science would have discarded. One more detail about Astria. I am highly confident they will want to work with the lab that already delivered excellent results, namely Astria. Sending the evidence to Astria, with their flawless track record, is by far the safest path. Reflecting on her own experience with this exact type of evidence, Moore stated, "I have already helped authorities solve 6 cases using only rootless hair. But there is a key caveat before we continue. Astria's involvement in the Nancy Guthrie investigation is the firm opinion given on the record by C.C. Moore, the country's most prominent genetic genealogist. To be clear, this is not an official confirmation from the FBI. Nor is it a statement from Astria, a lab that did not respond to requests for comment from Fox News Digital. While Moore's professional assessment is officially on the record, the formal status of Astria's involvement has not yet been confirmed. We make that distinction quite clearly, as it is incredibly important. Moore also outlined what the FBI's logical next step would be before launching any investigative genetic genealogy process. I imagine the FBI will first analyze the sample to determine if it matches Nancy's hair, her relatives, or known people who frequented that house. If it is not, I assume they will send the sample to Astria Forensics, and the real analysis will begin from there. This is the initial step ruling out any known, potential contributors. First, if the hair profile is unknown, it goes through SNP extraction to reconstruct its genetic map directly from the strand. That genetic profile is then uploaded to public genealogy databases. Investigators, using the very same genetic genealogy that caught the Golden State Killer after 40 years and cracked Gilgo Beach, begin building family trees outward from the DNA matches, revealing distant relatives. Those relatives are then cross-referenced with geography, the timeline of events, and the case facts. The suspect pool narrows until a name emerges. On this, Moore stated, "In my experience, this usually takes months, but I assume it will be an absolute priority, whereas others are typically cold cases. This is an active, high-profile investigation." Moore's assumption, officially on the record, is that they are fast-tracking the process as much as possible. But the warning comes from Moore herself, and it is crucial to mention because the risk is real. At that point, we can only cross our fingers that the hair belongs to Nancy's abductor and not some casual visitor. The hair was found inside the home. That is highly significant, as it drastically reduces the pool of potential suspects. But being inside does not rule out a family member, caregiver, visitor, or anyone else who stepped foot in that house. If that hair does not belong to the suspect, the investigation grinds to a halt without yielding a name. But if it is theirs, we now have the technology and the right lab to see this through. And before we move on, another confirmed revelation in the investigation demands our attention. On May 31st, former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer, who spent 28 years with the Bureau, publicly criticized the FBI for maintaining a decision that remains in place to this day. It turns out the FBI enhanced the suspect's surveillance video, even managing to colorize the footage. They clarified details impossible to see in the original blurry infrared video, yet they refused to release this enhanced footage to the public. Coffindaffer's official stance is completely unwavering, that sharp color footage needs to be released immediately. It would help identify him. Keeping it hidden is a real obstacle to closing the case. The public only has blurry, infrared screen grabs of a masked silhouette. Meanwhile, the FBI is sitting on a sharp photo of Nancy Guthrie's abductor, a revealing image they refuse to share. This marks the second institutional clash documented and confirmed by insiders within the investigation in just 72 hours. First was the 11-week delay at the crime lab, officially confirmed by the FBI. Second are the withheld enhanced images, publicly criticized by a 28-year veteran of the agency. We must pause to examine what that pattern really looks like across the entire case file. This is no isolated incident, nor is it just two. And in a case where every single day counts, it is a record that demands a deep review. On May 8th, Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos stepped out of the department headquarters in Tucson, where a digital reporter from Fox News was waiting for him. The reporter asked if they were close to solving the case. Nanos said yes, climbed into his white Chevrolet Corvette, and drove away. "Everything good?" It is almost 100 days now, sir. Are you any closer to solving it? We are. Brian Enton saw that exchange and, on day 100, revealed a very different story on his show, citing confidential sources. His contacts inside the investigation told him they were nowhere near a breakthrough. The sheriff spoke just 2 words, then vanished. The reporter closest to this case for 4 months heard a very different story from the people actually doing the legwork. There are 2 ways to read this massive contradiction. First, the sheriff genuinely believes they are closer, and his confidence reflects confidential information that has not yet been made public. Second, public optimism in a high-profile case is often just a tactical strategy. It keeps the tips flowing. It keeps the public alert while pressuring a watched suspect, ensuring they do not suddenly vanish. A sheriff projecting confidence to the cameras is playing a different game than the one briefed to his investigative team. The official narrative and the cold reality of the operation do not always match. The only firm, specific, and verifiable official statement that remains regarding the actual DNA status is the spokesperson's 5-word update on May 29th. Not a dead end. Still, no breakthroughs or imminent arrests. Not a dead end. That phrasing is deliberate and cautious. It tells you the investigation is still active, but it reveals nothing about where it is heading. Let us dissect the official file of this investigation, stripping away social media rumors and wild theories, leaving only the documented record from verified sources and officially confirmed by key figures inside the case. During the very first week, Sergeant Aaron Cross, who also heads the Pima County Deputy Association, spoke to Brian Enton on May 7th, describing the initial days of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance case as chaotic and a complete mess. He claimed there was an internal communication breakdown, so severe it crippled direct coordination with the FBI. Detectives within the same department were not sharing information. Cross admitted to Enton that the FBI likely felt shut out early on. Cross later walked back his comments to another outlet, claiming he had simply misunderstood certain operational details. But the core of his statement, the chaotic first week, and the internal silence, along with the friction in their relationship with the FBI, was never denied, and multiple independent sources confirm it. That version of events was also verified from the outside. Retired FBI agent Steve Moore, no relation to C.C. Moore, described the initial handling of the case as chaotic, the exact same word used by an FBI veteran analyzing the mess from afar. And then came the lab delay. The FBI requested the hair evidence in February. They wanted it because they already had the technology to process it, yet the local department sent it to DNA Labs International in Florida instead. The FBI dispatched a plane. 11 weeks passed. FBI Assistant Director Ben Williamson confirmed this. They demanded that evidence 2 full months before it finally reached Quantico. And at CrimeCon 2026, legal analyst Paul Morrow stood before a room full of experts and declared, "It looks like they simply were not cooperating." Let us talk about the images. The FBI has enhanced footage of the suspect, but they have chosen not to release it publicly. A 28-year FBI veteran stated on May 31st that this actively hinders the case. This is no simple mistake. We are looking at a documented pattern across multiple phases of this case, confirmed by local police and FBI insiders. Every single point of friction in this file cost time, precious time. In a case where an 84-year-old woman was dragged from her home barefoot and without her medication, in her pajamas, in the dead of night, time is no abstraction. There is a chilling theory raised by experts that no one has ruled out. The terrifying possibility that the captor of Nancy Guthrie is no longer alive. Criminal psychologist Dr. Gary Brucato addressed this head-on. His analysis of the abduction targeted, planned, surgically precise, and silent for 120 days points to a complex organized crime ring. His words were chillingly clear. If he is alive and caught, he will lead us right to the center of the web. That condition is no accident. If he is alive, let us analyze the suspect profile based only on verified evidence. He loitered outside Nancy's front door before the kidnapping. CBS News confirmed this through a law enforcement source. He knew about the security camera. He brings a flashlight and brush for cover. He carries a heavy-duty tactical backpack. He wears gloves. He wears a ski mask. He carries a firearm. He strikes in a 41-minute window between the camera blackout and the pacemaker shutoff, leaving no forensic evidence on the surviving footage. He gets away clean, followed by 120 days of absolute silence. Not a single confirmed sighting, nor any second ransom demand to the family after those initial threats. and absolutely no proof of life from whoever took her. The design of this crime, swift execution, zero tracking, and a flawless escape is entirely consistent with a professional's work. And in certain criminal organizations, the professionals who do the job are never meant to be linked to the mastermind who gave the order. This remains an unconfirmed theory, but respected experts are discussing it openly while investigators maintain their silence. A new report by TV Insider adds another dark layer of mystery. A retired Pima County Sheriff's detective suggests that investigators may already have the suspect's name. Rumors suggest they have identified him, but are keeping the information strictly confidential, waiting for the crucial physical and forensic evidence needed to build an airtight case for arrest. There is no official confirmation of this. With no named source, it is only tied to a retired detective with alleged inside knowledge. This could be a genuine leak from someone intimately familiar with the active case file. Or maybe it is just another dose of false hope, typical of the public narrative in this case from day one. The Pima County Sheriff's Department has not confirmed this. Neither has the FBI. These 6 words remain the single pillar in this case. This is not a dead end. Experts clarify what happens if that pillar crumbles, and DNA testing leads nowhere. A cold case does not mean the investigation is over. It means pulling resources. The file stays open, but the daily investigative work slows down drastically. The case sleeps until a new tip comes in, or forensic science advances enough to unlock previously unreadable evidence. That is the defensive wall that the Quantico lab analysis holds up today. As long as testing continues, the case has a pulse. The moment it wraps up, without a DNA match, everything changes. Not instantly, not entirely, but the situation changes. Resources get reallocated. Public interest fades. The investigation enters a very different phase. The hair sample is being processed right now. For the first time in 120 days, that statement is real. And this matters more than any press conference in 4 months. Before we dissect what $500,000 reveals about this case, we must document one crucial, confirmed piece of evidence. 42-year-old Derek Kala, a resident of Hawthorne, California. In the early days of the search, after the Guthrie family posted a video begging Nancy's captor to reach out, Kala used a voice-over IP app to generate a spoofed phone number. He then sent 2 text messages to Nancy's daughter, Annie Guthrie, and her husband, Tommaso Cioni, asking, "Did you receive the 12 Bitcoin? We are waiting for the transaction on our end." He admitted to sending the messages after being read his Miranda rights. The FBI traced the number to Kala's Gmail account and then to his residence, where they arrested him. He is charged with sending an anonymous interstate ransom demand and using telecommunications to threaten, harass, and abuse. These charges are unrelated to the actual ransom notes sent to the media, which remain under active investigation. The federal trial against Derek Kala is scheduled for June 23, 2026, in the Tucson courthouse. Now, regarding that $500,000, according to a report by the U.S. Sun from late May 2026, a story quickly picked up by News Nation, TV Insider, and several other media outlets, Savannah Guthrie has assembled an independent team of former federal agents, private investigators, and specialists working around the clock on her mother's case. The estimated cost, according to sources in that report, already tops 6 figures, roughly $500,000. Let's be absolutely clear about the source of this information. It comes from one anonymous individual. First exposed by the U.S. Sunday, Brian Enton, the reporter who has followed this investigation closer and longer than any national news outlet, stated on News Nation that he has not independently verified this report of private investigators. Neither the Guthrie family nor law enforcement has confirmed this information just yet. It all comes down to that single anonymous source from the U.S. Sun, and that does not change, no matter how many outlets run with the story. With that established, let's look at what this report reveals, assuming it is true. Money is not the issue here. Savannah Guthrie has plenty of it. That is not the point. What matters is where that money goes, why, and what it reveals about the official investigation from the perspective of those living this nightmare from the inside. Let's look at the financial decisions this family has made since February 1st. On February 7th, 1 week after the disappearance, Savannah recorded an Instagram video with her siblings to speak directly to the kidnapper. "Mother," she said, "we received your message and we understand. We beg you to return our mother to us so we can be with her. Only then will we have peace. This is valuable to us and we will pay." She was ready to give them whatever they demanded. She admitted it on camera, speaking to the captor. Then, On February 24th, the family announced a $1 million reward for any information leading to Nancy. Combined with the FBI offer, the total reward rose to over $1.2 million. And now, according to that U.S. Sun insider, they are spending $500,000 more on private investigators and former federal agents working outside the official case. She has no plans to stop searching for her mother, says the source. She feels that relying only on the official investigation is not enough anymore. That is why she is investing heavily in private investigators and outside specialists. She keeps telling her friends the same thing: the family cannot give up. Let's compare those three financial choices against the timeline of the case. The ransom offered in early February, before institutional failures and an 11-week lab delay were made public, and long before the department's internal chaos was exposed. Then came the reward in late February, right when the press conferences stopped, leads dried up, and the first public cracks in the case appeared. And now, private eyes. After 4 months, when the early days of chaos are an undeniable truth, after the FBI confirmed evidence was hidden from them for 2 months, and with Brian's sources admitting there is no real progress, each financial payout marks a precise moment where this family lost faith in the authorities. The pattern is absolutely clear. The woman closest to Nancy Guthrie, with more inside knowledge than anyone outside, and more resources than those within, has decided that sitting around waiting for the police to solve this is simply no longer an option. This is not celebrity gossip. It is a vital detail, exposing the ultimate contradiction of this case. Official claims of progress versus the reality of total stagnation. What can a private team of former federal agents actually do that the police cannot? They can operate without jurisdictional limits. They move without the bureaucratic red tape that has crippled this case from day one. They can re-interview key witnesses who have already spoken to the police. And sometimes, when you speak without a badge or a recorder running in the background, free from official rules, hidden details slip out. A neighbor who spotted a suspicious car in January, perhaps. A delivery driver who suddenly remembered something. Someone who had a casual chat and never thought to call it in. What they cannot do is raid properties. They cannot force anyone to talk either. They can't demand records or run DNA. They only gather leads to hand over to the police for official validation. But the forensic answer, if it exists, is still at the FBI lab in Quantico, where they are analyzing a hair with tech that barely existed 2 years ago. That is the one corner of this case that $500,000, $5 million, or any private detective on Earth cannot reach. If you know anything about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, anything at all, no matter how insignificant it seems, the FBI tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI. You can also leave tips through 88 Crime. The total reward for information on Nancy's whereabouts, or leading to the arrest and conviction of those involved in her disappearance, is $1,200,000. 3 lines of investigation remain active as we reach day 120. All 3 officially confirmed by the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Not one has led to a single arrest. Analyzing the security camera footage will shed light on what went down inside and near that house. Forensic analysis will deepen what we already know about the physical evidence. But only one of those 3 paths can actually give us a name. Only one lead can end with someone behind bars. And that path begins with a single hair found inside Nancy Guthrie's home, winding through a lab in Quantico, Virginia, and leading to what C.C. Moore, the scientist who has solved 6 cases with this type of evidence, believes will be Astria Forensics in San Francisco, extracting SNP data, a process based on the methodology of Dr. Ed Green, pushing toward the public databases that support genetic genealogy, tracing family trees in reverse across generations, from distant relatives all the way down to a name. That is the channel. The only route in this entire investigation that ends with someone in handcuffs. C.C. Moore described this case as solvable. She said she felt excited. The clearest expression of scientific certainty from an expert on any evidence in 4 months. Coming from a woman who has walked this exact path to a solved case 6 different times. But we must consider the risk, because it is real, and Moore herself warned us. The hair might not belong to the suspect, and the SNP profile, even if obtained, might not find any matches in the databases. Not every living person has relatives listed in a public database. This process could easily take months longer than expected. And when dealing with an 84-year-old woman who has been missing for 120 days without her shoes or medication, snatched from her home in the dead of night, talking about months carries a heavy weight that soft words cannot hide. That is where day 120 finds this investigation, neither solved nor cold. It is frozen right at that point where the next forensic result will solve everything or halt the active search. The DNA analysis is underway in Quantico. The review of the security footage remains incomplete. Forensic efforts are still ongoing. 5 words from the Pima County Sheriff's Department are the most honest summary available. It is not a dead end. That is where things stand on day 120. And we will cover any confirmed update here the second it breaks. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 120 days now. The investigation remains active. The DNA track is operating in Quantico, and her family refuses to give up. The next confirmed breakthrough in this case, whether it comes from the Quantico DNA analysis, the trial of Derek Kalla on June 23rd, or the private investigation team working daily outside official channels, we will cover it here immediately. If you want to see that coverage the moment it drops, subscribe and turn on notifications. Every major development in this case since the early weeks has been covered on this channel. Day 120. The leads remain active. Science is on the job.